Good afternoon, everybody. Today I have a guest called Colin Harty for my fourth episode of my autism podcast. Colin Harty is the location manager of the Southside Transition Team in Sandiford. So welcome, Colin.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So tell me a bit about your background and how did you came up in career in Gheel?
So I have been working in social care for about 13 years.
Yeah.
And I kind of started off when I was much younger, and I was volunteering, kind of helping out with the Special Olympics and coaching a bit of soccer for people with disabilities. But my first actual job in social care came with a place called Sunbeam House Services, where I worked as a community support worker in both residential and day services. And that was my first job a good long time ago. When I moved on from there, I moved to work directly with people with autism in autism initiatives, and I worked primarily in residential, a little bit in helping people get into independent living as well, which again I really enjoyed, and that was my first full-time job directly with people with autism. So I learned a huge amount from that. I actually moved away and worked in Australia for a while then, and I primarily worked with young offenders, so people who were 16 and 17 and were in youth detention centres. Myself and another guy set up, it was kind of a youth scheme where the guys would get out on day release, and we set up programs for them to integrate back into their local communities and look for jobs for when they'd get out of the youth detention system. And yeah, I ended up coming home and going to Gheel then, where I worked in Milltown Day Service for 2.5 years as a social care worker. And then I moved on to my current job, which is location manager. I knew at the time they were looking to split day services, and I thought it was a very good opportunity to really align ourselves with the New Directions model and to set that up. So that's my career path to here.
Yeah.
And Adrian, can you tell us a bit, about yourself, about your autism, about what you've found since coming to Gheel?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3 with this thing called pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specific, which means I'm somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. I'm not that either severe or that really high functioning. So part of my autism, I have delayed development, which means the way I develop, I wouldn't develop the way my peers do. Like, I wasn't talking until the age of 5, and I was born to be non-verbal. And when I'm part of my autism, I have a lot of obsession, OCD, anxiety disorder, lots of fixation, and I have social integration problem, which means I rather prefer to be in my autistic world rather than to be like other people, trying to be popular, things like that. And part of my autism, I likely to mix friends either with younger children in my age 19, or maybe other autistic people of any age, because with my peers there are lots of expectation, and because it's kind of a bit boring, because like making friends with young children, or maybe if some autistic people like me, because they're more likely to play rather than being a grown up, things like that, which I'm more find it easy with. And I'm starting to come into Gheel in 2019, straight after my leaving cert.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy Gheel. What I really enjoy is that in Gheel it's more like person-centered, where I get to say what I want to be supported with, rather than the professionals say what you need to do, what you can't do. Because like in Ireland, when you're in the children's service, like the Lucina, etc., they usually tend to be more, they tend to be more about changing the autistic child so they can grow independently. So there are some differences that are being eliminated, and they sometimes do try to make them to integrate with the society. So there'll be a lot of like social expectation, things like that. But like in Geel's not like that. Like if you don't want to learn social skills, you just want to continue to be yourself, then they just put that down. They wouldn't change you. And say I want to be learning about the basic skills and learning, and I want to be an autistic advocate to change the society, then that is what Gheel is supporting me with. And it's good that it's nearly like I'm the boss. The social care are just like trying to see what they can support me with.
Absolutely, Adrian. And look, one of the parts of this model of support is that we work in partnership with the people we support.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit, I know yourself and Brendan have worked together since you started here, but how that works for you in partnership and how some of your goals. You mentioned advocacy, how you've gone down that route now.
Yeah, it's really, really good. What I can say is that when I'm working with Brendan, because like here's the thing, the first time I saw Brendan, I was a bit worried that I'm going to have to force to change again. But and then when Brendan come in, he was so friendly, he was so patient, and what he says that even though if there's something that he disagree with me, he always can change me. Like sometimes maybe he can just make a bit of suggestion, but if I don't want it, or maybe that doesn't work in my way, then he cannot change me. He just have to let me be myself. So one of the good thing is that Brendan wouldn't change me, but instead he support me with what I want to achieve, like being an autistic advocate, and maybe gain some of the basic skills. So maybe just support me with some of the basic skills. For example, like how to self-organize, or say something I want to learn about, then he can do something to support around that area.
Yeah, well, one of the things, Adrian, that we look to do when someone starts with us is to try and figure out what drives somebody. What does somebody want? And I think you're a perfect example, because some of the goals you've worked on, including us sitting here today doing your own podcast, I think that's an amazing achievement. And it's all down to you, you know. I think and then with the advocacy, the fact that you've actually been out with some of the training team, when you went out with Mick and Dara that time to do a talk, can you tell us a little bit about how that was for you? And that
was really good, and I felt that was very important to give my insight to especially to the student who are studying social care, because these students, they're still learning, so it would be much easier to tell them about how to manage someone with autism, and also how to accept them, accept their difference, and not to change them, and maybe just support them in the best way. And it's good that when I was giving a talk to the student, they were all very excited when I was talking about having autism myself, so they know more, because I'm the one who's living with autism. Because that's the thing, you cannot always rely on professionals and think that, because you see, even though professionals are working with autism, but they don't have it themselves, so they think they are expert in autism more than autistic people do, but that's very false, because like they don't have it, so they don't know what it's like.
Absolutely, Adrian.
Because it's all about, because for them it's more about experience, and it's more about how they experience working with other autistic people, things like that. And even though you have experience, but they don't have it, so they don't know what it's like.
And Adrian, do you think then we've in some way been a bridging service for opportunity for you?
Yeah, it's really good that in Gheel they can listen to me, they can listen and say something I don't want to do. Then they say, all right, that's fine. And now I will explain like why I feel like, say if I don't want to change something, then I just explain like why I don't want to change, and I'll keep explaining. Then they understand. Then they don't change me, but only support things that I want to be supported with. Like for example, being an autistic advocate. That's the that's that's the biggest thing that Gheel can help me with. And also one of the good thing is that in Gheel, I heard it's more about like a person centered, where it's more where it's more where it's more about what the individual wants, and and not even not even about what the parents want. It's more about what the individual wants, what they want to be supported with, and what they. It's more about the individual, what they want and what they don't want, rather than rather than rather than the professionals say what you need to do, what you can't do. It's not like the ABA.
No.
So I know that in Gheel over the past 30 years they had changed a lot. So what is the evolution of Gheel? Like with the day service, things like that.
Yeah, so Gheel, like most services, have changed a huge amount since the 90s, I suppose, if you're talking 30 years. There was like massive ethos changes in the country as a whole, you know, and globally, I suppose. But in the 90s, I suppose the global disability rights movement started, which really endeavoured to move away from a medical model of care and into a more social model. They'd adopt a more social model, which was really a person-centered, rights-based approach, if you wanted to kind of simplify it, you know. And through that and through those times, they've come out with different approaches to people with disabilities. The transition approach that we have is quite new and dynamic, but there was many steps along the way that sort of got us here. And I suppose one of them was the decongregation of day services. So, and that's still ongoing for many services in the country. And I know in Gheel we're very quick to try and take this up, because I suppose we thought the overall benefit was going to improve the lives of the people we support. So an example of it would be a good few years ago in Milltown Day Service, they would have had 23 clients there. And at one stage they made a push to get to...
With how many social care?
There would have only been 6 or 7 social care workers. I don't know the exact amount, but there would have only been 6 or 7. But they made a push to provide day service from the person's own home, which immediately helped in social interaction in their local area, and, you know, meaningful kind of social roles around their local area. And it just meant as well that the kind of setting of a congregated setting where everyone comes in from 9 to 5 had been changed to where there was more one-to-one support, because it was the residential staff team who were supporting the guys, and they were able to do, and, you know, even for things like looking for jobs near their local area, if you're getting brought into a day service every day with a load of people, it can sort of fall into the trap of doing the same thing over and over again. And I suppose this whole change made people think about what are the actual overall goals that somebody wants to achieve. And it changed from that. And I suppose what we are, and our transition approach is like moving on from that. And what you'll see now, even from when I started in Gheel, is there's 3 day services on the south side of Dublin now instead of 1. So when I started, we split Milltown Day Service. So some of the guys from Milltown came to the transition team and adopted the transition model. People who would have been considered of the profile for a transition team. And Milltown stayed going. And now there's actually another service in Dundrum, community-based service, that's really working well to integrate people into the local area and help with goals and employment and education and things. But I suppose... if you want, I can quickly go through the transition approach, exactly what we see, and then your input into that.
Sure.
So our approach is really it's an innovative outreach service, and one of the main things is we aim to work in partnership with the person, as you've described so well earlier in the podcast. We run a support reduction model.
Yeah.
So what we're looking to do is enable people to have the skills that we can reduce support in certain areas,
Yeah.
while always looking for areas that somebody wants
Yeah.
support in. We essentially aim to help somebody achieve a better quality of life through many avenues, but a couple of which will be employment, education, housing, and a big one is social and well-being,
Yeah.
because we see that as sort of a starting point for people to achieve their goals.
Yeah.
And look, we try and understand the person. We try and really deeply understand the person and work in partnership to figure out what they actually want from a service. You know,
Yeah.
our starting point isn't here's what we provide for you. Our starting point is to sit down with you and see what you would want.
Yeah.
And I think that worked quite well for you. You've had amazing outcomes even in your short time in Gheel. But one thing, Adrian, I'd be very interested. I know you've done work experience in day services.
Yeah.
So be very interested in maybe what you thought of that, or
Yeah.
any recommendations that
Yeah.
you could maybe give to our day services and us.
Yeah. So when I was in transition year, or even my work experience for my further education last year. So I worked in St. Michael House. St. Michael House is kind of an organization that support people with special needs, but usually they support people with like intellectual disability or other severe special needs. But they and what they do there is they do provide. So with St. Michael House, it's not just for adult, but it's for children and adult.
Yeah.
So they do provide service like, I know that with the adult service they provide like day center, residential home, and for children I heard about they do have special schools, but I'm not sure do they provide anything like therapy, or maybe, but I know they do have social care, but usually in the day service there'll be more nurses rather than social care. But maybe there might be one or two social care.
And how did you find working there, and what kind of roles did you take up while you were there?
I really enjoy it. So basically, I was working in a day center, which is in, I think it's in Dundrum town. So with that day service, these adults they'll be severely special needed. So these adults, they would be having the intelligence maybe around 3 or 4 years old, and I really enjoy working with them. So I will be more like a voluntary worker, like doing art and craft with them, or doing activities with them, keeping them in company, watching movies, or like, because some of these adults there, they like to be with other people, or maybe going outing with them, or just do a bit of jobs like making cup of teas for the staff and the service user, and even helping, or maybe just do a bit of like, I remember I did like, yeah, or maybe just doing a bit of transportation where I move something, or like they have some decoration in the day center and I was helping to put up or put down the decoration.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it, and it was really good. And I remember in that day center, it was nearly like so they have like 10 service user with 8 staff.
Yeah.
And then I think they have 5 toilets, and 3 of the toilet are kind of bigger size, nearly
Yes.
like a room. Because you see some of these service users, they are on a wheelchair. And these service users, they do have a lot of physical need support, like feeding them, because unfortunately some of them they have the intelligence of a 1 years old, so like they can only crawl or maybe stand up, but they cannot walk the way we do. So they need wheelchairs, and some of them maybe because they're still on diapers, and they need to change diapers, and some of them they have a lot of support like feeding, cleaning, showering, changing clothes. So it so they do have a lot of these physical support. So usually there'll be more nurses, well maybe there'll be one or two social care, and what they do and for me and in the day service they also have a sitting room, a sensory room for those who need a bit of quiet time, a kitchen, dining room, there's an art room, an office. It's more like a home style, like sitting in there it was so warm, so comfortable.
It sounds like you got incredible experience, Adrian.
Yeah.
Like incredible experience, and I know through
Yeah.
getting to know you over the last year and a half,
Yeah.
that you'd be interested in some peer support stuff.
Yeah.
For other clients.
Yeah.
In Gheel, and I know that one of the other services has reached out to you recently about an acting class they're going to do. To ask you, is there a way of making it autism friendly?
Yeah.
Could you give us a little bit of insight into how you would do something like that? I know the guys came to you and asked you, but into making a class environment autism friendly for some of our clients.
So here's what my recommend is for Gheel. So if I have to, so like, because as an autistic advocate, in the past I did voluntary with some of the autistic people, autistic children, working with them. So because now, so what I would say is, because I did visit Milltown before, and I have a lot of recommendation, if I have to recommend. So first, I really appreciate, what I would say is, I really appreciate the way they support the autistic people. They don't see it something needs to be changed, but something need to be supported with, and need to be accepted. Like for example, I remember one of the social care told me that when he worked in the Milltown Day Center, there's a person who like train. Before he go on the train, he would need to walk around 3 times around the train station. But if he bump into someone, he need to do that again. But like, if you change him for that, you're going to damage a lot of mental health on him. So you just need to accept it. But the thing is, out in the Irish society, people can be very cruel. If you bump into someone and you do that again, other people may stare at you, especially you're adult. People may even start to give out to you, starting to say like you're invading their space, they're not comfortable. But like basically it's the society who needs to change. So what the social care would do is he still need to let the person to do that, but he just, so I heard it's something called positive risk taking, which means because like with autistic people sometimes they could be in the society and doing something that could be quite dangerous, but they still need to do it, but like you cannot stop them. Or like something they might do it where they might be feel as suspicious behavior. But like, because like in real life, say if the society wasn't like that, and seeing other people different as suspicious behavior, or fearing just because of the different behavior call it dangerous. Like if the society weren't like that, then it wouldn't be dangerous for them. So basically it's a society who needs to change. So what the staff would do is he just that social care, he would assist the person when he walk around the train station. He would just make sure just to watch over him, and if he bump into other people he would just go and say, sorry, this guy has special need, he just need to do, that's just part of his ritualized behavior or etc. And to make people understand, because that's what your job are like. You are a social care. Even though it's look tiring to you to make people to accept the autistic client, but you still have to be, you just have to be doing more job, and you just have to be much difficult on yourself. and to help the service user to make the society accept them. So that way this guy can do his behavior like walking around the train station 3 times, and if he bump into someone he do it again, and then that way he can still continue to do it without being judged and people mind their own business.
Well, Adrian, one of the huge benefits of you being in our service is that through advocacy and through the kind of lines
Yeah.
you want to go, you're going to be really able to raise awareness, and you already have done by
Yeah.
some of the brilliant things you've done
Yeah.
since being here, you know. So raising awareness and education really in
Yeah.
public, so people understand
Yeah.
people with autism better, you know.
Yeah.
I think what you've done so far is absolutely brilliant, and your work
Yeah.
with the training team in Gheel as well.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that something? I know you feel quite passionate about it.
Yeah.
And maybe one of your podcasts you could bring someone on and speak directly about
Yeah.
that. About
Yeah.
how could you actually get out and
Yeah.
change society's perception
Yeah.
and education around
Yeah.
autism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important because, like, as an autistic advocate, I would be more like on the autistic people's side to change the society, rather than the society who need, rather than we need to change for the society, because, like, often when you're in the ABA service, they will say things like some of the difference can be quite dangerous for them, but not the society, but will be just them, because like the society will feel them like suspicious, or maybe like other things like if they were steaming the public, they would worried about what will happen if others saw that and they laugh at them and maybe go and pick on them or maybe getting bullied for that. Then what they do is they try to change the autistic behavior so they don't have to be bullied for that. But I see that that's a big wrong things to do. Because first of all, steaming is not a harmful. The reason why you say it's harmful is because of the bully, but what if the bully change? Because like if you change the person, it can damage the mental health. Because I think the bully is the one who needs to change. Because like, here's the thing. Someone is on a wheelchair. You wouldn't just say, because like someone cannot walk, they need to be on a wheelchair. But like even though when they cannot walk, you wouldn't force them to walk. And then when they're on the wheelchair in the public, you call that inappropriate and say they need to change. No, you wouldn't do that. Like look at nowadays, for those who are on a wheelchair, they even have a specific space like in the transportation, public, or any public using accessory. They even have a special space for the wheelchair user, so if they cannot walk, they can sit on the wheelchair, and you wouldn't judge them as inappropriate. So it's the same apply for the autistic difference, because their steaming special interest, that is like their wheelchair for their autistic world. So you just need to accept them, and you don't really change them, because like, for example, when I was working in the day center, one of the good things is that they accept the service user difference. Like when they go out and they steam, they just let them steam away. And I've seen when they've gone to the public, sometimes. Now here's the thing. I know that in some case they might be doing something that can make other people inconvenient, like if they were banging someone's car. Well, some of them, they might even talk to stranger, but I mean, it's usually depends though. I mean, if you talk to some strangers, some people wouldn't mind, while some people can be, well, I mean, depends, but I mean, usually when the nurse go with them, often the nurse do, say for example, if they have any behavior other people don't understand, usually the nurse will just go and explain to the people, saying that this person has special need, he just want to be friendly with you, just want to say hi to you, and asking where you're going, are you going to shopping, and sometimes, but I mean usually, nowadays in some society, people much friendlier. Like if they know your special need, people wouldn't mind that you will do something like people, sometimes people would just, like for example, for those who may have a bit of disruptive behavior, where they might be, well, I wouldn't call it disruptive, but maybe for the society they will feel it as disruptive. But like sometimes when they see other people, they say hi to them, even though they don't know the person, and say, "What are you doing?" Then usually the person knows you have special need, and they say, "Oh, I'm just going to shopping," and what are you doing? And then they will just laugh, and then they will just say, "Well, have a nice day," or maybe, or maybe, yeah. I mean, it's more about changing the society.
Absolutely, and it sounds like there has been progress made. But what do you think the next step would be for breaking down those societal barriers? So do you think maybe some kind of like a big push on education for people, or
Now here's the thing. I would say law enforcement. Because unfortunately, there are many autistic people who face bullying, discrimination, or something. They may feel that they need to work this way, but the society wouldn't let them to work this way. Because maybe people may not feel comfortable, things like that. So as they get older, they develop some violent behavior because they're under distress. So maybe they might be starting to hitting people. They have a fear of people. But I mean, and maybe some of them they might have violent behavior where they can see other people and may pinch them, hit them. And unfortunately, in some case when they got in trouble with the law, they tend to have the same right as other people. And I feel like it's not really fair on them. Because here's the thing, when every people have right, they still need to have the responsibility. So when they have the same right, they have the same responsibility. So unfortunately, when it's come to the law enforcement, I heard countries like USA or England, the law system are still apply the same for autistic adult, where if they commit crimes, they still go to jail without seeing the context why they commit crimes, and why would they do that? Because the thing is, they often do worry saying, but they often do worry that because often people say things like having autism is not a free pass, it's not a free pass or an excuse for the behavior. But like I do find this very disturbing because first of all, you have to know that autistic people or special need people, they do have a bit of behavioral needs that need to be accepted, which it might be like spoiling them, but you cannot say it's spoiling them or overindulging them or excusing behavior.
well,
So
I think a big thing was the Garda project that you worked
yeah,
on with Brendan, and I know that when the guards came in to talk to you, they kind of addressed some of your worries as well. And
yeah.
did you find them to be helpful around?
Yeah, I find it was so helpful to hearing them like how the law, how the criminal justice works in Ireland, that that they are more friendly. They wouldn't be like the USA cops where they would just go and grab them whenever they see suspicious behavior and
There
get very
seems to,
aggressive.
there's more acceptance in Ireland, maybe,
Yeah,
it seems.
yeah. And what I know in Ireland is that in Ireland, I know the guards say that. Well, here's the thing. Usually, when you're talking about criminal justice system, it's more about what you did because like there are different because like for example, I know like usually getting into physical fight in the street, regardless of anyone, like hitting or shoving, because it wouldn't be that serious like when you murder or rape someone. So usually simple assault, usually they look into context. Like if they, because first of all, when you have autism, and they know you're doing this because you're under distress, then they try, well, if it once or twice, especially when you're severely, I know that they tend to just let it lie away. But if they know that, but if it keep happening again, they just find support for it. But like for those who, but usually, because I know with crime there are different level of the severity, and I
Well,
think
Yeah, absolutely, Adrian. And I think definitely as your podcast starts to grow, we can
Yeah.
get somebody who is an expert in the criminal justice system in to
Yeah.
talk to you, you know,
Yeah.
at some point, if you'd like. Um,
Yeah.
to you know, at some point that we could get someone
Yeah.
in when you're
Yeah.
and I know you've done so many really really good
Yeah. Yeah.
podcasts so far, and I've really really enjoyed being
Yeah.
here today, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
um,
So to wrap up for my recommendation, so what I would say is that public education and also law enforcement changing different boundaries for special need people, that if they, for those who have traumatized behavior, maybe violent behavior, maybe try to try to support them in a positive way, and maybe say if they got into physical fight with someone just like once or twice, maybe just let it slide away until it's keep happening again, that you call that you find the support rather than locking them up in jail, especially when it's just come to assault like hitting, shoving. And maybe for Gheel, it would be good if they give more, if they educate the society more, say if the service user have something that can be look suspicious, don't change them, but you only change the society. And maybe and maybe for and maybe for and and maybe and maybe and I know that for some parents they do want to change their autistic child difference. Like sometimes they may even try to get the social care in Gheel to change it. But if they have some situation like that, maybe they can explain it back to parent. Maybe they change the parent instead, telling
Absolutely,
them
Adrian.
that it should be the parents who needs to change their attitude, not their children. And maybe it's just all about changing the society, changing changing the society attitude. And the other thing I would say is that if we can also have, also for those who are high functioning autistic and they have trouble in the public, I would say it would be good is that if we get an autistic card and they can put it on them so they can get more free pass. Like for example, here's the biggest thing I would say. I know that many autistic adults don't want to grow. Like they will still enjoy going into the playground, but unfortunately in the Western society, because people are paranoid about protecting the children from being harmed from adult, because like when an adult going to the playground without their own children or family member, then people might feel them like they are suspicious, like kidnappers, pedophiles. So people may call the police on them. So like sometimes people may want to avoid this risk by telling them not to go into the playground. But I think that's very wrong though.
Well, I think awareness and education, Adrian, is the
Yeah.
crux of it, really.
So maybe if they have the autistic cards and maybe the playground might say, alright, instead we might have to give a free pass for the autistic adult to go into the playground, because they wouldn't go because like autistic adult, they just want to enjoy the playground the way children does. They don't want to look like they're not there to hurt children. They're there just to enjoy like children does. So maybe instead if they have the autistic card, say even though people still are not comfortable, they should be changed. If people call the police, if the police or the guards come, then the police and the guards should just see the autistic card and they should just let them get away with. That's the way it should work. So maybe it would be more like public education, and maybe more the society who needs to change, and maybe more like personal center support, And maybe for Milltown, like to address back your answer, maybe for day center for the severe autistic people, maybe if they could change, like if they can be a bit like St. Michael House, where it will be more like a home, like in the day center. I think that would be good.
Um, Look, Adrian, it's been absolutely brilliant. I just wanted to say as well, it's been a wonderful year and a half that you've been with us here
Yeah.
in Gheel,
Yeah.
and it's an absolute pleasure working with you.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So it was pleasure to have you as my guest, and it's really important we talk about like how the Gheel staff work, how Gheel work, because that's many Irish parents are looking for their autistic children, that when they turn 18. So maybe, yeah, so it's really pleasure to have you. And my next guest is going to be Emmett, who is the Gheel employee, and it's going to be, the topic will be about autism and OCD, which is something I have, and I think it's really important to say this out to the society as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adrian.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.